She needs full-time care, my son whispered to the doctor, his arm around my shoulder. Yesterday she couldn't even remember where she parked at the grocery store. The doctor nodded sympathetically, neither noticed my fingers, steady as a surgeon's, slipping the small recording device deeper into my cardigan pocket. Recording number 47. Evidence for the safe. One day closer to the reckoning. The doctor's office was too cold. They always keep these places frigid, as if the chill might preserve us aging bodies a bit longer. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, the perfect picture of docile confusion, while inside, a fire burned that would have surprised them both. Mrs. Winters has shown significant cognitive decline over the past 6 months, Dr. Hendricks said, not to me but to my son James, as if I were already gone. The forgetfulness, the confusion with dates, misplacing important items, these are all consistent with early-stage dementia. James squeezed my shoulder. To anyone watching, a supportive son. To me, his fingers felt like talons. We've noticed, doctor. It's been challenging. I kept my face carefully blank, just slightly bewildered. A small, confused smile. Eyes that didn't quite focus. It was exhausting, this performance, but necessary. The recording device pressed against my ribs, capturing every word. I think we need to discuss care options, the doctor continued. It might not be safe for her to live alone anymore. And there it was. The sentence they'd been orchestrating for months. The path to my house, my assets, my independence. I've been researching some excellent assisted living facilities, James said, his voice thick with manufactured concern. Cedar Grove has a memory care unit that's supposed to be wonderful. Cedar Grove. The place where James's father-in-law had spent his final miserable months before passing. A warehouse for the inconvenient elderly. I'd visited once and promised myself I'd rather live in my car. I remembered that visit vividly. The chemical smell, trying to mask something more sinister. The vacant eyes of residents parked in wheelchairs along the hallway. The aide who snapped at an old man who'd spilled his water. This isn't a hotel, Mr. Peterson. And James wanted to put me there. My own son. Mom? James nudged me gently. What do you think about that? About getting some help? I looked up, allowed my eyes to drift slightly past his face, as if struggling to focus. Whatever you think is best, dear. My voice small, uncertain. The doctor made some notes. We'll need to run some more tests, but I think this is a prudent direction to consider. As we left the office, James guided me with a hand on my elbow, as if I might wander into traffic without his supervision. The same James who at 7 I'd taught to ride a bike. At 16, I'd stayed up all night to finish his science project when he'd procrastinated. At 30, I'd refinanced my house to help him start his business. Now, at 43, he was plotting to strip me of everything. The hallway seemed endless. Each step, I felt James's impatience, the slight pressure of his hand urging me to move faster. When had my presence become such an inconvenience to him? When had I transformed from mother to obstacle? I remembered the day he was born, 43 years ago in a hospital, not unlike this one, the weight of him in my arms, so small, so perfect. I'll protect you forever, I'd whispered to his tiny wrinkled face. And I had, through every childhood illness, every heartbreak, every failure. Who would protect me now? Do you want to get some lunch, Mom? He asked as we reached the car. I nodded vaguely. That would be nice. I'm not very hungry, though. You need to eat, he said firmly, helping me into the passenger seat, like I was made of glass. As he drove, I gazed out the window, thinking about the real appointment I had tomorrow. Not with a doctor, but with my lawyer, Marjorie. Fierce, meticulous Marjorie, who'd been my friend since college and who'd helped me document every incident of my supposed mental decline. Marjorie didn't know the full extent of my plan yet. No one did, but tomorrow, I'd show her everything. The trees blurred past the window. October in New England meant a riot of colors: crimson, gold, burnt orange. Robert and I used to drive to Vermont each fall just to see the foliage. God's own fireworks display, he'd called it. After the cancer took him, I'd continued the tradition alone. Last year, James and his family had joined me. Had they been planning even then? Calculating the value of my home while pretending to admire the scenery. The restaurant was one of those chain places with bland food designed not to offend anyone. James ordered for me without asking what I wanted. Turkey sandwich for my mother, please. No mayo. She doesn't like mayo. I've loved mayo my entire adult life. It was James who hated it, who would gag dramatically as a child if it came near his food. But I nodded agreeably. How's Diane? I asked, referring to his wife. He looked slightly surprised that I'd remembered her name. A crack in my performance, but a calculated one. She's fine, Mom. You saw her last weekend at the house. I frowned slightly. Oh yes, of course. Then I took a deliberately too large bite of my sandwich to end the conversation. James checked his phone repeatedly during lunch. Important business matters, no doubt. Or perhaps updates to Diane about how their plan was progressing. The turkey sandwich sat heavy in my stomach. I thought about the first time I'd met Diane, 15 years ago. She'd been charming, attentive, asking questions about my life and career. I'd been so pleased that James had found someone who seemed genuinely interested in his family. When had that changed? Was it gradual, or had it always been an act? I was thinking, James said, setting down his phone. Maybe I should start staying over at your place a couple nights a week, just to make sure you're okay, to make sure I don't burn down the house. He meant to establish a presence, to begin the transition. Oh, I don't want to be a bother, I said. It's no bother, Mom. That's what family is for. Family. The word tasted bitter now, but I smiled weakly. If you think it's best. The waitress cleared our plates. She was young, probably a college student. She had a kind smile for me, not the patronizing one I'd grown accustomed to. I wondered what she saw. Just another old lady being taken to lunch by her dutiful son, or could she sense the currents of betrayal flowing beneath our polite conversation? As he drove me home, I thought about the last 6 months. It had started small. A suggestion that I'd misplaced my glasses. I hadn't. Comments about appointments I'd supposedly forgotten. James or Diane rearranging things in my house, then expressing concern when I couldn't find them. At first, I defended myself vigorously. I did not forget that appointment. It's right here in my calendar. But their concerned glances at each other, the gentle, patronizing tone they used. It's okay, Mom. Everyone gets confused sometimes. Made me realize something sinister was happening. That's when I began keeping the journal. Every incident, dated and described in detail. Then came the small recording devices. Legal in our state, as long as one party to the conversation was aware of the recording. I was aware, very aware. I remembered the moment it all clicked into place. 3 months ago, standing in my kitchen, overhearing James on the phone. It's getting worse. She can't manage on her own anymore. The house is just too much for her. But I'd managed fine for the 12 years since Robert died. The house was immaculate. The bills paid on time. The garden thriving. That night, I'd gone to the basement and found the old lockbox where Robert kept important papers. I'd emptied it, replacing the contents with old grocery receipts. The real documents went into a new safe hidden behind a false panel I installed myself, using skills learned from years of watching Robert tackle home improvement. James helped me into the house, insisting on carrying my purse as if it were too heavy for my frail shoulders. I'd carried him for 9 months inside my body, but apparently my purse was now beyond my capabilities. I'll make us some tea, he said. That would be lovely. I settled into my armchair, the one Robert had bought me for our 25th anniversary, 4 years before cancer took him. From this chair, I could see through to the kitchen, where James was opening cabinets with the comfort of someone who already considered this space his own. Mom, where did you move the tea? He called. It was where it had always been, second cabinet from the refrigerator. But last week I'd seen Diane reorganizing that cabinet. moving things to higher shelves that would be harder for me to reach. I'm not sure, I called back. Maybe check the pantry? I heard him sigh heavily, the put-upon sound of a man dealing with a difficult child. While he searched, I slipped a recording device from my pocket and tucked it into my bra. Later, I would transfer today's recording to my computer, save it to an encrypted folder, and back it up to a cloud account. James knew nothing about it. I'd learned about cloud storage from Emma, my 13-year-old granddaughter. It's like having a secret box that lives on the internet, Grandma, she'd explained while showing me how to upload photos from my phone. Emma had always been patient with me, unlike her parents, who seemed to expect perhaps hope for my technological incompetence. The tea, when he finally located it, was too sweet. James had always liked his tea sweet, convinced that's how I made it during his childhood. I hadn't, but mothers make compromises. Today, I sipped the too sweet liquid and smiled. This is perfect, dear. Thank you. His phone chimed, and he glanced at it. Diane wants to know if we should bring Emma and Lucas over for dinner tonight. Emma and Lucas, my grandchildren, 13 and 10. The emotional leverage. That would be wonderful. And it would be. Despite everything, I loved those children fiercely. Great. We'll come around 6. He stood, collecting our mugs. I need to get back to work, but we'll see you tonight. After he left, I sat in the quiet house for a long moment. Then I rose, moved to the bookshelf, and pulled out a leather-bound volume disguised as a photo album. Inside were my most recent notes, observations on conversations and incidents that had been engineered to make me doubt myself. I added today's doctor's appointment, James's plan to start staying over, the rearranged cabinets. Then I locked the journal in my bedside table, the obvious hiding place they'd already searched many times, finding only innocuous romance novels and crossword puzzles. The real evidence was elsewhere. I glanced at the clock. 3 hours until dinner. Enough time. In the basement, behind the water heater, was a false panel. Behind that panel was a small safe. And in that safe was everything I needed, the complete journal chronicling 6 months of gaslighting, USB drives with recordings, medical reports from my own private neurological exams confirming my cognitive health, bank statements showing unusual withdrawals James had made using my misplaced debit card, and photos of Diane wearing my supposedly lost jewelry. I fingered my grandmother's pearl necklace, which I'd reported missing 2 months ago. You probably misplaced it, Mom, James had said soothingly. We'll find it. 2 weeks later, I'd seen Diane wearing it at a family dinner. When I pointed it out, she'd smiled sadly. This is mine, Betty. David gave it to me for our anniversary last year. You must be confused again. But I had the receipt from when Robert had it restrung for me 10 years ago, and a photo of myself wearing it at James's 40th birthday, just last year, all safely documented in the hidden safe. But there was something else in the safe too, something they didn't expect, the deed to James's house. 5 years ago, when his business was failing, I'd paid off his mortgage to prevent foreclosure. He'd insisted on putting the deed in my name, just temporarily, Mom, until the business recovers to protect it from creditors. The business had recovered spectacularly, but the deed had never been transferred back. James assumed I'd forgotten about it. I hadn't. I ran my fingers over the papers, the evidence, the power. Then I carefully locked everything away again. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. I made my way upstairs, bones aching from the basement stairs. That part wasn't an act. 72 years leave their mark on a body. But my mind, sharp as the day I'd graduated with honors, started my own accounting practice, raised a son alone after Robert died. In the kitchen, I prepared for dinner. Lasagna, the children's favorite. As I layered noodles and cheese, I thought about Emma and Lucas. How would they feel when they learned what their parents had been doing? The thought made my hands tremble. Emma, perceptive beyond her years, had already asked questions. Grandma, did you really forget my clarinet recital? Mom said you did, but you've never missed one before. And Lucas, his eyes confused when I'd forgotten the name of his soccer team, the one I'd cheered for every Saturday for 3 seasons. But children are resilient, and they deserve to know the truth about their family, about integrity, about consequences. The sauce bubbled on the stove, filling the kitchen with the scent of tomatoes and herbs. My recipe, one James had grown up with, asking for seconds and thirds at the dinner table. Had he forgotten those meals? The countless ways I'd shown my love through everyday actions? I remembered a conversation with Robert, years ago when James was still a teenager. "He's a good kid," Robert had said, "but he's got a selfish streak. We need to be careful not to indulge it too much." Had we failed in that? Had we somehow raised a son who could look at his mother and see only a resource to be exploited? At 6, the doorbell rang. I shuffled to answer it, a bit slower than necessary, playing my part. "Grandma." Emma wrapped her arms around my waist. Lucas held back, suddenly shy at 13, but gave me a small smile. Behind them, James and Diane exchanged that look, the one that said, "Isn't it sad how she's declining?" "I made lasagna," I said. "Mom, you didn't need to cook," James said, but his eyes darted to Diane with a different message. "See? She shouldn't be using the stove alone." "I wanted to," I replied simply. "Come in. Come in." The children's energy transformed the house. Emma chattering about her science project. Lucas showing me a new trick he'd learned with a soccer ball in the backyard. For a moment, it felt like a normal family dinner, the warmth of connection pushing back against the chill of betrayal. But then I caught Diane opening my medicine cabinet in the downstairs bathroom, making a note of something on her phone. And James, checking the stove burners twice after I'd turned them off, shaking his head slightly. Dinner was a performance. I deliberately put the salt shaker in the refrigerator while getting drinks, called Lucas by his father's name once, asked Emma about a school project she'd completed months ago. Each slip was noted with meaningful glances between James and Diane. Each was another brick in the wall they were building around me. The lasagna was perfect, though. Some skills are too deeply ingrained to forget, even when you're repentant to be forgetful. "This is delicious, Grandma," Emma said, helping herself to a second serving. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's your grandfather's recipe." A deliberate error. It was my recipe, and everyone at the table knew it. Don't you mean your recipe, Mom?" James corrected gently. I blinked slowly. Did I say Robert's? I meant mine, of course. Sometimes the memories blend together after so many years. Diane patted my hand. "It's perfectly understandable, Betty." I resisted the urge to pull my hand away from her touch. After dinner, while the children helped clear the table, James and Diane cornered me in the living room. "Mom, we've been thinking," James began, his voice gentle. "After what the doctor said today, maybe you should come stay with us for a while, just until we figure out next steps." Diane nodded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We could convert the den. It would be cozy." The den, a windowless room in their basement. My prison cell. "Oh," I said, blinking rapidly, as if confused or emotional. "That's very kind. We just want what's best for you," Diane said, reaching for my hand. I allowed her to take it, though her touch made my skin crawl. "When would this be?" "We were thinking this weekend," James said. "No time like the present, right?" This weekend. My heart pounded. They were accelerating their timeline. "What about my house?" I asked, allowing a note of distress to enter my voice. "We'd take care of everything," James assured me. "You wouldn't need to worry about a thing." I bet they wouldn't. Could I think about it overnight? I asked. They exchanged another look. "Of course, Mom," James said, "but we really do think it's for the best." I watched their faces, these people I'd trusted, searching for any sign of remorse or hesitation. There was one. Just the smooth confidence of those who believe they're doing the right thing or have convinced themselves they are. After they left, taking my grandchildren's warmth with them, I sat in the dark living room for a long. Then I picked up the phone and called Marjorie. "They're moving up the timeline," I said when she answered. "This weekend." Marjorie's voice was calm, steady. Then we move up ours. Tomorrow, tomorrow, I agreed. After hanging up, I moved through the quiet house, touching familiar objects. The grandfather clock that had been Robert's pride and joy. The collection of seashells from our trip to Sanibel Island for our 30th anniversary. The gallery wall of family photos, James as a toddler, a teenager, a college graduate, his wedding to Diane, Emma and Lucas as babies, then growing year by year. Was I really prepared to shatter all of this? To expose the rot beneath the glossy family portrait? Yes, because some betrayals can't be excused. Some wounds won't heal if left untreated. I slept poorly that night, dreams filled with hospital corridors and locked doors. But when I woke, my resolve was ironclad. I dressed carefully, not in my usual comfortable slacks and sweater, but in a sharp blazer and pencil kink I'd worn in my working days. Low heels, pearl earrings. Robert had given me subtle makeup, a woman in command of herself. When James arrived at 10 a.m., just thought I'd check on you, Mom. His eyes widened slightly at my appearance. You look nice, he said, suspicious. Are you going somewhere? Actually, yes, I replied, my voice stronger than it had been in months. And I'd like you to come with me. Where? The confusion on his face was genuine. I have an appointment. It's important to me that you're there. He hesitated, then nodded. Let me drive you. No, I said firmly. I'll drive myself. You can follow in your car. Now he looked truly baffled. Mom, you haven't driven in months. It's not safe. I smiled thinly. Humor me, James. This one last time. Something in my tone must have alarmed him, because he didn't argue further. Fine, but I'll be right behind you. I'm counting on it. As I retrieved my car keys from the drawer where they'd lain unused for months, by my choice, not from any inability, I felt a surge of anticipation. The careful documentation, the patient gathering of evidence, the strategic planning, it was all leading to this moment. I drove perfectly, obeying every traffic law, signaling each turn with precision. In my rearview mirror, I could see James following, his face a mask of concern. The fall day was glorious. The sky a perfect blue canvas against which the red and gold leaves seemed to glow from within. The kind of day Robert would have loved. Good weather for a reckoning, I whispered to his memory. Our destination was a small professional office building downtown. Marjorie's law office. As I parked, I saw James's expression shift from concern to confusion. Why are we at a lawyer's office? He demanded, as we met in the parking lot. You'll see, I said, walking ahead of him with a straight back and steady gait. The receptionist greeted me by name. They're waiting for you in the conference room, Mrs. Winters. They? James asked, his voice sharp with sudden anxiety. I didn't answer, just continued down the hallway, the click of my low heels on the hardwood floor, marking a confident rhythm. Marjorie was waiting in the conference room, along with my longtime physician, Dr. Chen, and a neurologist I'd been seeing privately, Dr. Patel, and Diane. Marjorie had arranged for her to be here, though from Diane's expression, she clearly had no idea what was happening. James? What's going on? Diane asked as we entered. I have no idea, he said, looking around the room. Mom? I took a seat at the head of the conference table. Please, everyone, sit down. They did, exchanging bewildered glances. Mom, whatever this is, James began. I held up a hand, silencing him with a gesture that felt like reclaiming my power. For the past 6 months, I said, my voice steady, you have been systematically attempting to tune me and others that I am suffering from dementia. You have moved my belongings, lied about appointments, manufactured evidence of confusion, and manipulated medical professionals. James's face drained of color. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. That's ridiculous, James stammered. Mom, this is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we've been worried about. I nodded to Marjorie, who opened a laptop. The recording from yesterday's doctor's appointment filled the room. She needs full-time care, James's voice said. Yesterday she couldn't even remember where she parked at the grocery store. Then Marjorie played another recording, a conversation between James and Diane in my kitchen, when they thought I was napping. The doctor's practically convinced. Another month of this, and we'll have her declared incompetent. The house will sell for at least $600K in this market. James's face was ashen now. You've been recording us? That's illegal. Single-party consent state, Marjorie said coolly. Betty was aware of the recordings. I watched my son's face, searching for any sign of the boy I'd raised. The child who died when he accidentally stepped on a caterpillar. The teenager who defended a classmate from bullies. When had he changed? Or had that person been an illusion all along? But why would we do this? Diane asked, her voice trembling. It doesn't make any ends. In answer, I pulled out the deed to their house. Perhaps this is why? Or maybe it's my investment portfolio. Or simply the value of my home in a desirable neighborhood. I laid the deed on the table. You've been living in a house that's legally mine for 5 years, James. Did you think I'd forgotten? That I wouldn't notice you never transferred it back after your business recovered? He stared at the document, then at me. It was a temporary arrangement. We always intended to what? Return my property? Or simply wait until I was declared incompetent and unable to claim it? Diane looked at James, confusion and dawning horror on her face. You said that was taken care of years ago. Interesting. So he hadn't shared all the details with his wife. The cracks were already starting to show. Dr. Chen, Dr. Patel, I continued, turning to the physicians. Would you please share your findings? Dr. Chen spoke first. I've been Betty's primary care physician for 20 years. At her request, I conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment 3 months ago. She shows no signs of dementia or significant cognitive impairment. Dr. Patel nodded in agreement. I've administered multiple neurological exams and cognitive tests over the past 2 months. Mrs. Winters scores in the top percentile for her age group. There is absolutely no evidence of decline. James was shaking his head. This is crazy. Mom, you've been forgetting things, misplacing things. No, James, I said quietly. I've been pretending to forget things. Playing along with your gaslighting because I needed to understand how far you were willing to go. The silence in the room was deafening. What happens now? Diane finally asked, her voice small. I looked at my son, this person I'd raised, this stranger I now sat across from. That depends. On what? James whispered. On whether you're prepared to make amends, not just to me but to your children, who deserve better examples of integrity and compassion. I laid out my terms. Family counseling, a formal acknowledgement of what they'd done. The deed to their house transferred back, but with conditions protecting my grandchildren's inheritance, and a legal agreement regarding my own autonomy and asset. If you refuse, I said calmly, Marjorie has prepared documentation for the police regarding elder abuse, attempted fraud, and theft. Those recordings and journal entries would be quite compelling in court. James looked at me with a mixture of fear and anger. You'd do that? Send your own son in jail? I raised my son to be honorable, I replied evenly. The man sitting across from me now, the one who conspired to have his mother declared incompetent for financial gain, I don't recognize him. The next hour was painful. Tears. Recriminations. Diane blamed James. James blamed financial pressure. Both tried to minimize what they'd done. It wasn't like that, James insisted. We were worried about you. You were becoming forgetful. Then why not discuss it openly with me? I asked. Why the secrecy? The manipulations? The deliberate gaslighting? He had no answer. And the jewelry? I continued. My grandmother's pearls that somehow ended up around your neck. Diane? Was that also concerned for my welfare? Diane flushed deep red. James said you had given them to me, that you just forgot. I turned to my son. Did I? Did I give away my grandmother's pearls? The ones I've told Emma would be hers someday. The ones I was wearing in photos just last year. James couldn't meet my eyes. But in the end, faced with the evidence and the potential consequences, They agreed to my terms. Marjorie outlined the next steps, the papers that would need to be signed, the family counseling that would begin next week, the legal protections that would be put in place. As we prepared to leave, James attempted to approach me. "Mom, I stepped back. "Not now, James. The words don't mean anything yet. Show me with actions, over time." In the parking lot, Marjorie squeezed my hand. "You did it, Betty." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. "The hard part starts now. Rebuilding. Or maybe building something new." "Are you going to be okay going home? Alone?" she asked. I looked up at the clear blue sky, feeling the weight of the past 6 months lifting. "I'm not alone. I have myself. For now, that's enough." The drive home was surreal. 6 months of pretending to be less than I was, and now, finally, could just be me again. The neighborhood looked different somehow, brighter, more vibrant, or perhaps it was just my perception that had changed. At home, I changed into comfortable clothes and made a cup of tea, just how I liked it, with a hint of honey. I sat in Robert's chair and closed my eyes. "I did it, Robert," I whispered. "I protected myself, like you always said I could." I could almost hear his response. "That's my Betty. Never underestimate her." The phone rang several times that afternoon. James, Diane, even Dr. Hendricks, probably confused and concerned after hearing from James. I let them all go to voicemail. Tomorrow would be time enough for more conversation. Tonight was for me. I took out my journal, a new one, not the record of betrayal, but a fresh start, and began to write about the day, about my feelings, about the uncertain future ahead. Would James and I ever recover from this? Could I ever trust him again? I didn't know. The betrayal cut too deep for easy answers. But I did know that I was Betty Winters. I was 72 years old. My mind was sharp, my will was strong, and my life was my own. Later, I went to the kitchen and opened the cabinet where the photo albums were kept. I found the one from James's childhood, his gap-toothed kindergarten smile, his proud stance beside his first bicycle, his graduation from high school with honor. I traced my finger over these images of the son I'd loved so fiercely. Where had that boy gone? Had our mistakes as parents led him to this place where property and money meant more than integrity and family? Or was it something innate in him, a flaw we'd failed to correct early enough? Perhaps the counseling would help us understand. Perhaps there was still a path forward, if not to what we had been, then to something new and honest. I closed the album and returned it to the shelf. The past couldn't be changed. The future remained unwritten. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No more need to maintain my guard, to remember which mistakes I'd pretended to make, to plan my next strategic move. Just rest. The next morning, I woke to knocking at my door. When I opened it, Emma stood there, backpack over her shoulder, eyes red from crying. "Grandma," she said, voice breaking. "Dad told us what they did. Lucas wouldn't come. He's too angry. But I needed to see you." I pulled her into my arms, this precious girl caught in the middle of adult failures. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed against my shoulder. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I whispered into her hair. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "They kept saying you were confused, but you always remembered all my stories and my friends' names. It didn't make sense. Children see more than we give them credit for." I led her inside, to the kitchen where so many family conversations had happened over the years. I made hot chocolate, her favorite since childhood, and set a mug before her. "What happens now?" she asked, echoing her mother's question from yesterday. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Now we heal. All of us, in different ways. Will you forgive them?" Such a complex question from a 13-year-old. I considered my answer carefully. "Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination," I said finally. "I'm taking the first steps, but trust needs to be rebuilt, and that takes time." She nodded, wise beyond her years. "Can I come over after school sometimes? Just us?" "I would like that very much." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the steam rising from our mugs, the the morning sun casting patterns on the kitchen table. "Grandma," Emma said finally, "I want to learn everything you know. About cooking, about darting, about everything. I don't want those things to be lost." My heart swelled with love for this child. "Nothing will be lost, Emma. I promise." After Emma left for school, I spent the day reclaiming my home. I moved things back to where I wanted them. I deleted the fake reminder notes James and Diane had placed around the house. I changed the locks, not out of fear, but as a symbol. This was my space, and entry would be on my terms. In the afternoon, I drove to the bank and met with the manager. I closed the joint account James had insisted I open in case of emergency and transferred the funds to a new account only I could access. I updated my will with specific provisions to protect Emma and Lucas's inheritance. Small steps toward independence, toward security. The days that followed fell into a new rhythm. James called daily, but respected my request for space. Diane sent a handwritten apology letter that seemed genuine, if incomplete. The family counseling sessions were difficult, but necessary. Lucas, my grandson, remained angry. He refused to speak to his parents for 2 weeks, moving into the guest room and communicating only through notes left on the kitchen counter. When he finally came to see me, his young face was set in hard lines that broke my heart. "They lied to us," he said, pacing my living room. "About you, about everything. How can we ever trust them again?" I sat with him. This child forced too early into adult disillusionment. People make terrible mistakes, Lucas. Sometimes out of greed, sometimes out of fear, sometimes because they've convinced themselves they're doing the right thing. "That's no excuse," he said fiercely. "No," I agreed. "It's not an excuse, but understanding why people do wrong helps us decide whether they deserve a second chance." Lucas was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the maple tree in my backyard, the one he'd climbed countless times as a younger child. "Do they deserve a second chance?" I sighed. "I don't know yet. That's what we're all trying to figure out." He nodded slowly. "I'm glad you're okay, Grandma. That you're, not actually losing your memory." "Me too," I said, giving him a small smile. "And Lucas? It's okay to get angry, but don't let it consume you. That only hurts you in the end." Words my own mother had spoken to me decades ago, after my father had walked out on us. Wisdom passed down through generations, a lifeline in troubled waters. The next family counseling session was a breakthrough of sorts. James finally admitted the full truth that financial pressures and the temptation of my assets had led him down this dark path. "The business isn't doing as well as I've pretended," he confessed, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "We're deeply in debt. The house, your house, Mom. It seemed like a solution. You could have just asked for help," I said quietly. "I've never turned you away." "I was ashamed," he whispered. "And then once we started, it seemed easier to continue than to admit what we were doing." Diane sat beside him, her own confession halting but necessary. "I told myself we were helping you, that you really were becoming forgetful, and we were just speeding things along, making the inevitable easier for everyone." "Easier for whom?" Dr. Rivera, our counselor, asked gently. Diane had no answer. Outside the counselor's office, in the crisp November air, James approached me tentatively. "Can I drive you home, Mom?" I considered refusing, but the path to healing had to start somewhere. "Yes," I said finally. "That would be fine." The drive was quiet, awkward. Near my house, James finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about Dad, about what he would say if he knew what I'd done." I looked out the window, memories of Robert flooding back. His integrity, his gentle strength. "He would be disappointed," I said honestly, "but he would also believe in your capacity to make things right." James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know if I can make it right, I mean. You can't undo what's been done," I told him, "but you can choose a different path going forward." As he pulled into my driveway, James turned to me. I really am sorry, Mom, for everything. I looked at my son, truly looked at him, and saw both the betrayer and the betrayed, the man who had plotted against me and the boy I had raised. The complexity of love and disappointment intertwined. I know, I said simply, and I'm working on forgiveness. But trust is earned, James. Show me who you really are, who you choose to be, in the days ahead. That evening, I went to the basement and opened the safe one last time. I took out the recordings, the journals, the evidence of betrayal, and set them aside, not to destroy, but to archive. A history I hoped would never need revisiting. Then I added something new to the safe, a letter to Emma and Lucas, to be opened when they were adults. A letter about resilience, about standing up for yourself, about the complicated nature of family love, and about forgiveness, how it doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing to move forward unburdened by bitterness. I locked the safe, hiding away both the painful past and hopeful future. Then I climbed the stairs back into the sunlight, each step carrying me forward into whatever came next. I was Betty Winters. I was 72 years old, and my story was far from over. The phone rang as I reached the kitchen. It was James. "Mom," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know you don't want to hear it yet, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry, truly sorry." I let his words hang in the air between us for a moment. "Actions, James," I reminded him gently. "Show me with actions." "I will," he promised. "Every day for as long as it takes." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the home I'd fought to keep. I didn't know if James would keep his promise. I didn't know if our family could be rebuilt from these broken pieces. But I did know that I would no longer pretend to be less than I was. No more playing small, no more silence in the face of injustice, even from those I loved. The journal lay open on the table before me. I picked up my pen and wrote, "Today marks the beginning, not of forgetting, but of remembering who I am." As winter gave way to spring, our family began a slow, tentative healing. James followed through with counseling, worked to repair his finances honestly, and most importantly, showed consistent respect for my autonomy. The deed to his house was properly transferred, with legal protections for Emma and Lucas's future inheritance. Diane and I developed a different relationship, more distant, but more honest. She volunteered at a senior center, perhaps seeking atonement, perhaps discovering a genuine calling. Either way, it changed her. Emma and Lucas spent more time with me. I taught Emma to bake my special apple pie, the recipe never written down but passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. I helped Lucas with his history project, sharing stories of my own childhood that connected him to a past he'd never known. One afternoon in late April, James came by with a small wooden box. "I found this in the attic," he said, handing it to me. Inside were letters I'd written to Robert during our brief separation in the early years of our marriage, letters he'd kept all his life, that I thought had been lost. "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved. A small gesture, but meaningful. A piece of my history returned. "I've been thinking," James said hesitantly, "about what happened, about why I did what I did." I waited, giving him space to find his words. "I think I've spent my whole life afraid of not measuring up. To Dad. To you. You both were so capable, so strong. And I just wasn't." I studied my son's face, seeing the vulnerability he'd hidden for so long behind ambition and material success. "You never had to measure up, James. You just had to be yourself." "I'm starting to understand that," he said quietly. We sat on the porch swing, watching the spring flowers nod in the breeze. Not quite comfortable, not fully reconciled, but present, together. Some wounds heal completely, leaving no trace. Others leave scars that fade but never disappear. Our family carried its scars now, visible in the careful way we spoke to each other, the new boundaries I maintained, the shadows that sometimes crossed James's face when certain topics arose. But we were healing. Imperfectly, honestly healing. On my 73rd birthday, the whole family gathered in my backyard. Emma had baked a cake. Lopsided, but made with love. Lucas had written a poem that made me cry. Diane brought flowers from her own garden, and James gave me a simple card with words that mattered. Thank you for not giving up on me. As I looked around at these imperfect, complicated people who were my family, I thought about the safe in the basement, the evidence I'd gathered, the pain I'd documented. It would stay locked away, a reminder of where we'd been, but not a map of where we were going. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat at my desk and opened my journal to a fresh page. I wrote, "The greatest power isn't in hiding who you are, but in standing fully in your truth, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. I am Betty Winters. I am 73 years old today, and I am exactly who I choose to be." And that, my dear listeners, is how standing your ground can sometimes be the greatest act of love. If my story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that age doesn't diminish your worth or voice, then remember this: trust your instincts, document everything, and never ever let anyone convince you that your reality isn't real. I have more stories to share in the coming weeks, some heartbreaking, some triumphant, all of them true. So hit that subscribe button to Grandma True Stories, because we're just getting started, and the wisdom of our years is a force to be reckoned with.